One.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today I want to show you guys how to use Google Forms. That's what I decided to geek out on. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a play-by-play of how that works and how I've decided to use that in my classroom. First and foremost, we got to get to Google Forms. So forms.google.com. Now, one thing that's great about this is that it is free as long as you have a Google account. I know a lot of districts are moving towards Google because a lot of their software is free. For instance, we have Chromebooks in the district and things of that nature. I do enjoy it's taking forever to load. Anyways, so you will see this screen, assuming it loads. All right, now these are some of the ones I've already created, and we'll explore these later, but I just kind of want to show you guys how to set this up first. My advice of these options right here, I would go to the blank quiz, and you guys will see this. All right, it starts like this, quite simply. You get to go ahead and kind of name your quiz. Let's see, give it a second. There we go. Oh. Example quiz. So one thing that's nice, well, you have a description here too, so you remember what it is, or so maybe your students know what you're talking about. But here are the questions. Now, one thing that's nice is you have all these different options right here. They have added some stuff in the past. The simplest ones are definitely going to be your multiple choice, paragraph, short answer. But let's start with something that's simple multiple choice right here. Which was already at. So, for instance, I could ask like a general question like, what character was your favorite? And this is obviously going to be an opinion one. So, go ahead and fix this. And you can go ahead and have, went to short answer now. Here's option one. We fill in. Man, I can't spell today. Anyways, we'll just do one more, and you could add more and more. And that was actually my other. Go. All right, so those are the options now I have in here. And now, if I want to see what this looks like, well, actually, let's backpedal. Let's go to settings. And what's really neat about this is that you can go ahead and decide how you want to do this. Can we collect email addresses? We turn that on and off. If you want to keep it anonymous, I would say you get rid of that so you don't know who's doing this stuff. You get people who respond many times by clicking this. Probably like people just respond once. And then this is my high school district. So we could keep it just people in the district or make people outside the district be able to access this. Let's turn that back on. And then this option as well, if you want people to be able to go back and change things, this is some really, really basic stuff that's really helpful in order to figure this stuff out. Anyways, so let's go ahead and save that information. Now, I want to go over to this blank quiz because I started writing questions before filming. But this is going to be the grid type of question you guys can ask, multiple choice grid. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. I went ahead, they have a linear scale. And what's nice about this too is that you could actually increase the scale to 10. You can go down to 4. I know usually I don't like having a odd number because there's that neutral one. So we'll go down to 4. And I wrote in this that, what was your opinion of the novel Dracula? Either hated it or loved it. Now, if you want to see an idea what this looks like, a little preview, so you know what your students will see before you have them take this, click on that little I button. And as soon as it loads, here we go. This is essentially the quiz they'll get a chance to go ahead and to fill out. So, maybe you have a general question, when are you available to make up a test or a quiz? Before school, both days, but one thing that's nice, it won't let you choose both. So this could be helpful if you wanted to know when to have a study session, maybe when you should make your hours available to your students based on their schedules. Here's the linear one. And then this was a short answer. What was your favorite part of the book? They could go ahead and type in whatever they want. Now, one thing that's kind of fun to look at is some of the responses. I went ahead and took this quiz before I started recording. So I went ahead, I said when I was available, and you guys could see it's got tallied. There was 1 vote for Monday before school, and then there was 1 vote for Tuesday after school. That's what I voted. What was your opinion of the novel Dracula? I went ahead and gave it a 4 because I loved it, of course. And then what was your favorite part of the book? this is what I typed. And one thing that's great about this is that I know there's just one response now, but all this stuff will shift as more and more responses are added. And this is just a really great way to instantly poll your students. I know some teachers have actually been able to use this as a way to check grades. Because if you hit this button, all the input is downloaded into a spreadsheet. And if you do go ahead and allow our emails to be collected alongside this, the email will show up, the response will show up, and there's add-ons that Google has, which actually grades it automatically. I believe Flubaroo is one of them. That's something not something I'm particularly well versed in, but that is definitely something that you guys can use. All right, something else that I did want to show how to use Google Forms with. One's quite simply just maybe reordering the questions. Maybe you decided you're not a big fan of the order that you have your questions in. So if you grab that little dot that I just grabbed, and I'll show you guys in a second too. It lets you kind of drag and drop these where you want the questions. You just got to click this guy, and it'll let you go up or down with it. The other thing I want to talk about too is this required button right here, this little notch. That requirement is turned on, so a student could not go ahead and submit this form unless this question's answered. So it's kind of nice if there's optional things you want to hit, or it's absolutely required. It's just good to have that. And just a quick reminder here too is the fact that I don't have my email addresses are not being collected because I do want this to be anonymous. I am restricting this just to people within my group right here in our district, and then you can only respond once. So I think now would be a good time to talk about why I chose to spend time talking about this stuff, or geeking out on Google Forms. I have found in my class discussions, whether it be for my English classes or my sociology classes, that I might have a class that's timid as a whole. There might be a few students that don't like sharing their opinions in general, and that kind of to me is a disadvantage, that I don't get to hear from them or their input isn't heard. And a good example of this, we read Oedipus Rex in class, and you guys are probably familiar with the story. The child grows up to end up killing his father. He ends up marrying his mother. Now, this is a slideshow that I might go ahead and discuss with my students. For this one, it's by a show of hands. Raise your hand if you believe in fate or destiny, and then this one will pop up if you do not believe in fate. And what it kills me is that some years you have students that can't even bother to raise their hands, or maybe they're even too shy to do it. And these are some of the questions that I have to go with it. Do you believe that your fate is already written? And the more important part, of course, is why do I not? And then eventually this one pops up. Are we the product of our own choices, or are we following a preordained path? And I think this is fun stuff, and it's it really digs deeper into not only just understanding the story itself better and understanding Greek culture and how they thought about fate, but what we think about fate as a society, individually. And here's another question right here, when I ask students, and some years, some classes, I've got great participation. Other classes, I could hear crickets chirping. So Google Forms is my solution to that. And to kind of give you guys an example of what I'm talking about, I created just recently a general English survey for my students. They had to go through and answer about stuff that we've read throughout the year. So here are the questions that I've got. Basically a pretty wide array. And I stuck with the multiple choice questions just because Google Forms does such a great job of visualizing the responses from your students, which I'll show you guys in a moment. Just some opinion stuff that was fun. I always, exclaim Hector. I kind of expected Hector to win this vote, but I'm not sure if he did. We'll see in a moment. Favorite hero, so on and so forth. But my favorite, in terms of, for this class is this question right here. And this is kind of the whole point of why I want to introduce this into my class. So, do you think that seeing everyone's input would help fuel discussion in class about the stories we read? My theory is that if students see, what their classmates say, that they might be more willing to participate. And we'll see if my students thought the same. So I'm going to go to responses, because I did have all my English students take this. And it's kind of fun right here. Like I said, you get that quick visualization. I've got 50 students that took this Google form. 70% said that Dracula, yes, was in fact evil. But I was actually kind of surprised that 30% of my students said that no, he wasn't an evil character. And yet again, this one, all sorts of options. We see very quick visualization. And if you guys drag the cursor over here, it'll tell you specifically who it is. Like this little sliver over here, it's going to be our Dr. Seward. I don't think Lucy got any votes. Poor Lucy. And there's some general stuff. I just love these visualizations. They're quick. The class can go ahead and see the stuff really, really easily, and we move on. But we'll keep on going down. This I loved. I was just talking about Oedipus as well. It's almost evenly split right here in terms of the role fate plays in the story. So that's just kind of fun for me. Yet again, we see not even split, but a complete split here with these three different things. This one is a good one too. Which of the following characters was your least favorite from The Way of the Werewolf? The way the story is written, 52% of the people said the Baron's wife. I'd like to know that the Baron was the werewolf. I could definitely tell they understood that story, that the werewolf was actually a good character in that story. Anyways, we scroll down, and then it's important to me. So do you think that seeing everyone's input would help fuel discussion? And 86% of my class said yes. So to me, that's extremely encouraging that hopefully my students will be willing to discuss more once they know the way the class feels, or just to kind of see that it's kind of divided almost everything. Now, that's for my English classes. For sociology, I'm really excited about this. Now, none of this stuff on my English, for English classes, it was all opinion-based, so it didn't really matter if it was anonymous or not. Now, for my sociology, I really wanted something that was going to be anonymous. And the reason is, these are some of the topics that we talk about in class. One that was, very uncomfortable, but I thought a really healthy conversation to have with young students, juniors and seniors in high school. We talked about sexual assaults right here. That was just right before Thanksgiving. We talked about the anti-fascist movement today, transgender rights. So we talk about some stuff that's fairly controversial, some other stuff that's controversial, but it's nothing new. This is really what I was wanting to use Google Forms or this anonymous polling system for. And I'm going to show you guys my sociology questions. And I wrote these questions very similarly to how I wrote the questions for the English ones, the English questions. So I'm not going to go through that stuff. But, throwing together some questions for my students. What are your thoughts regarding the Second Amendment? And it's all over the place, which I think is really great for us to see that we're pretty divided. And I've got 34 different students for this. So I just thought that was really interesting to see this stuff. And one thing that's important too, and this abortion question really reminds me this, is that just because the way the class discussion goes, that might not be very representative of how everybody feels in the room, because maybe they don't want to speak up against the class. So this is just another good way as to why Google Forms is going to help me really understand how my class feels. One thing too, I should mention, and it's kind of showcased here, is that we have these class discussions pretty much every Friday throughout my semester. My students love these. I enjoy them. It's really, really great to hear my students share ideas and their opinions in a respectful manner with each other. But back to this. I was actually surprised to see some of these numbers being as high as they are. Almost nobody said that they were pro-life in class, yet 17.6% of my students, they anonymously were happy to go ahead and say that. So I think seeing solidarity and understanding that other students feel this way will help generate class discussion and let people, be confident in how they feel, depending on what it is. And one thing I should note is I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I just want everybody to understand all aspects of an argument when it comes to stuff like this. The first one we did was over euthanasia. So we have some different perspectives on here. Some people said that, no, there's absolutely no time where it's acceptable to terminate your own life. And that surprised me as well, because I would not have guessed that 20% of my students felt this way after the class discussions we had that I led. This one was just kind of a goofy one because obviously with Trump being president, there's usually an uproar of my students, good and bad. So here's just about the wall. This was me just kind of being silly with my students. And then back to me, it's really important. The survey results are instant, and I can show what percentage of people answered each option. I'm just letting my students know how this would work. And I say, hey, do you think this will help generate more class discussion. And even higher than my English, 91.2% said yes, this will. Now, this is also kind of funny that I told my students that they would have to go ahead and write these Google form sheets, and they're a little less in favor of them, but they're still highly in favor of them. And actually, one thing I should mention because of this last question was on that one right there is that I do in fact have my students write these class discussions, that it's a grade for them, and they go ahead and they are the ones that are in charge of running this information. And they actually get a grade for it. And that's why there are usually groups of 3 students. And I think it's really good they get a chance to pick their own topic, whatever they want. And it does change from year to year. But that's why I think it's so important to let students kind of go ahead and anonymously say how they feel about any given topic. All right, and now I have to kind of think about some of the challenges that I'm having instituting these Google Forms into my weekly class discussions, particularly with my sociology students. That's just because, the good news about Google Forms is that the second that the student finishes the form, it's instant. This can be done from their phones. I've posted the links to the Google Forms on my Google Classroom, so it's really easy to get there. Or they can do it with a Chromebook if you have access to those, really any internet access. Now, what I am struggling with is when should students take these polls? Should it be before the class discussion? And one thing that's cool about if they do it before the class discussion, for instance, if I wanted to go ahead and put this slide for whatever reason into my slide, I could copy the chart right there. I go over to my Oedipus PowerPoint, or Oedipus slideshow. I can go ahead and insert that right into it because it'll copy and paste it for me, and then it's now there. I could size that and show that in class, and it's great, and it's a good way to reference and without skipping a beat. However, the problem with that is for sociology is that some of these things my students know very little about. So for instance, today during the Antifa, the first 5-10 minutes of the class discussion, the student that led this discussion had to explain to my class what it was and what they did. And, so it would be really wouldn't be useful if I had students go ahead and answer survey questions about Antifa if they know literally nothing about it. So that's kind of the issue I'm having. The 2 solutions I see to this are, have students poll after that student goes ahead and explains what Antifa is and now answer questions. Maybe we could do it at the end of the class, or maybe, I don't know, at the end, because it kind of defeats the purpose of generating more class discussion. Or that maybe, we have Thursday, we have our, that's that class discussion leader explain what Antifa is. So therefore, students go ahead, they take this survey before the class discussion Friday, and then we can embed those images into the slideshow, and therefore it's far more fluid and it's not a very choppy discussion. And that's definitely one thing I am considering, and that's something that I need to figure out before I completely implement these in. And I should also mention that I do check my students' slideshows before they present. I let them know, I'll look at them, give them suggestions to make sure that it will last the whole hour. And that's the exact same type of practice I would do with the Google form. Give my suggestions, tell them, I would help them. I might even write certain questions for them if that's something they might struggle with. And one thing I want to mention too, because actually the principals ended up in our room during class discussion, just kind of like a informal pop in, and he's really just said how much he likes the idea of these discussions we've had. We had one over minimum wage, and I know it's not on this list, but he goes, that's what a democracy is all about, and that's kind of the whole point behind this: is sharing ideas, seeing what each other say, and just discussing this stuff. So that's kind of the whole point behind this, and that's why I chose to geek out with Google Forms. I think it's going to be helpful down the road, just giving us relatively instant feedback about how we feel about certain topics. And hopefully students that might be a little shy otherwise, well, hey, I'm not, there's another 17.6% of the class thinks that pro-life is the correct approach to abortion, so they'll share their ideas, and the class gets a chance to learn from each other. Anyways, that's been what I've been geeking out over.